Hello and welcome to Sunday Night Conversations presented by D1Baseball.com. I'm your host, Michael Patrick Rooney. Tonight's episode brought to us by our good friends at Netting Pros, the official netting partner of D1 Baseball and Sunday Night Conversations. They're the industry leaders in sports facility netting and equipment solutions. You can find their products at some of the top venues in Division I college baseball: Tennessee, University of Texas, Arkansas, Texas A&M, Oregon State, LSU, Mississippi State, and so many more. Whether it's batting practice equipment, facility netting, custom wall padding, or custom facility improvements, Netting Pros are the top choice in the industry for facility equipment solutions. Visit nettingpros.com today to learn more. So grateful to those guys. They are awesome in every way, shape, and form. Tonight's conversation, very excited for this. The topic is the SEC West, the extinct SEC West, which hurts my heart to say that. The SEC is has no longer has divisions. And I just want to be clear, I'm not here to criticize that decision. We have very smart people at the SEC who love college baseball. And I'm sure the reason that they've left the divisions is smart. And obviously it has to do with going to 16 teams. But as a college baseball nerd and fan, it does hurt my heart, because I would argue the two greatest divisions in the history of our sport are the old six-pack. From the late 70s to 1999, you basically had the six West Coast prominent schools: Arizona, Arizona State, UCLA, USC, Stanford, and Cal, playing each other 6 times a year. It was, they had to have the National Guard ready when they were doing that. And those teams were just crushing Omaha. They won 8 national titles in those 20 years. And so incredible. When I think about the SEC West, it's funny, as I researched this, how about this? The SEC West has had a team in the CWS finals in 6 of the last 7 seasons. I'm going to let that sink in. A team from this division of 7 teams in a sport with 300-plus teams has had a team in the CWS finals 6 of the last 7 years. National titles 3 in a row: 2021, 22, 23. How about this? Is a really cool stat too. 6 of the 7 teams in your all's division, 6 of the 7 have been to Omaha since 2021. So it's not just like top heavy, right? Like everybody is so good. And then you think about the atmospheres. The West has the best atmospheres in college baseball, hands down. And also I think about some of the legendary coaches, some of the guys that you guys played for, but Skip Bertman, Ron Polk, Hal Baird. I mean, just you go right down some of the current coaches. I mean, it's like a who's who of college baseball Hall of Fame coaches. So anyway, I am so excited to reminisce about this a little bit. If you're watching on the screen, you can see we've got Nolan Cain, recruiting coordinator, University of Texas, played at LSU. We've got Carl Lafferty, recruiting coordinator at Ole Miss, played at Ole Miss. Laugh, you basically invented Ole Miss. Like, you've been there for it might have been called a different school when you went there. It was like Mississippi School of Mines and Technology. I'm just kidding. But Laugh's been there a long time, played there, coached there. And then Gabe Gross, who played at Auburn and now is coaching at Auburn. And so, boys, let's start here. Nolan, you were on the LSU team in 2009 that won the national title. You played there from 06 to 09, 4-year player. Laugh, you were at Ole Miss from 98 to 01. Something that's really fun about you is you were Mike Bianco's first catcher. And remember, he was a catcher at LSU, and that was your senior year. And then Gabe, obviously, you played football and baseball at Auburn. And 7-year big league career, so much great stuff. Nolan, here's my first question, and we'll go around the horn. How'd you end up at LSU? Give us your recruiting story.
Oh, that's a long story. I'd gotten injured and going into my senior year, so a lot of the recruiting had kind of stopped a little bit. And then, Turtle Thomas called me and gave me the big guy, the whole thing. And I actually hung up on him the first time because I was like, oh, somebody's playing a prank on me, I came over maybe in a quiet period to watch me throw a bullpen. I didn't really know the rules back then. Came and watched me throw a little bit, and, they made me an offer, and that's ended up how I kind of got to LSU. I'd gone over there to play in some tournaments as a young player, and, that was back when they're ripping off 5 natties in a decade, and went and watched some baseball over there when you're 13, 14 years old. So it was a pretty cool experience.
So, Nolan, where'd you grow up?
Pensacola, Florida.
And then, so did you have 2 different coaching staffs at LSU also? So you had Pulmonary. Did you? Yeah.
Yeah, I played for Smoke and Turtle and those guys. And then Coach Maneri came in the fall of 2006.
Got it. Oh, that's awesome. By the way, Turtle Thomas reference in the first 4 minutes of the podcast. Absolute winner right there. That's tremendous. Laugh, you go next. Tell us how you ended up at where'd you grow up and how'd you end up at Ole Miss?
I'm from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and kind of the way I got to Oxford is I recruited Ole Miss, essentially. Recruited by the University of Arkansas, Norm DeBryan, obviously a great coach, great program. Gene Stevenson at Wichita State. But I had gone over to Ole Miss actually when I was in like 9th grade on spring break to watch a guy from my hometown, Jamie Price, who was an All-American here. Of course, dated and married like the best looking girl from my hometown. She came to Ole Miss. Her little brother was my best friend. So I showed up here and I was like, this is where I want to go to school. And my dad actually knew a guy that was in the fundraising arm of the athletic department. Kind of tried to push my name a little bit, and I came over here to camp. And lo and behold, I've been here since like forever. So
great. Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. It's great. I love the hometown connection. I think that always applies when you're like your hero growing up, the great player that's a few years older than you, whatever that person does, we all want to do. That's great. Gabe, so I want to hear your recruiting story, but here's what I perceive it to be. You were either going to Auburn or you were going to be told to join the Army or at the very least, move out of the house.
My parents were great about me making my own decision. My grandmother, not so much. Told me I could go anywhere I wanted to, but if it wasn't Auburn, I wasn't getting any Christmas. So that was her shot through the dark. But football played a big part in my recruiting. I went on official visits to Auburn, NC State, Tulane, and UAB. In fact, Schlossnagle was at Tulane at the time, and so I kind of met him at that point. And being able to play both sports was a big deal to me, and that didn't come around till later in the recruitment. Coach Baird and Auburn offered me the summer before my senior year in baseball. Auburn football offered me after my senior football season. But getting those two together and knowing that I could come in and try to play both sports was a little bit of a dance to do. And on my official visit, Terry Bowden told me he had talked with Coach Baird and that they had worked out an agreement for me to play both sports. And having said that, he didn't see any reason that I wouldn't commit. And I said, I don't either. And, I'm coming. My dad had played football at Auburn in the early 70s. I'd grown up going to Auburn. And if the opportunity to play both sports was there was really no way I was going anywhere else. That was no doubt that was going to be my school.
That's awesome. Your dad played in the NFL too. Like, what was his take on the two sport thing, Gabe? Like, was he into that, or did he feel like you should just focus on one or the other?
My dad let me and my brother both decide really all our real decisions about sports, and he didn't push anything on any of us. Having said that, he, in his own way, really kind of pushed me just playing baseball. Once I got to be in college, he didn't necessarily wanted me when it was apparent that I was going to get offers in both. He wanted me to just play baseball. Loved the game of football. Still love the game of football. It has been a passion of mine my whole life. There was no way that having the opportunity to play college football that I was going to decline that. And yet at the same time, when I got to Auburn, it was very evident that my talent was a little bit more in baseball. And if I wanted to have a career professionally, that baseball was probably the route I needed to take.
That's so great. Very cool. Hey, so let's go to this next. When I think about you, and I'm really focused on you guys as players for a little bit here. So, as I mentioned earlier, one of the big parts of this league is the coaches are just legendary in so many ways. So for you, Nolan, you mentioned Turtle Thomas, which is amazing. I want to focus on Paul Maneri, though. Like, I think I tweeted this summer when he took the South Carolina job. I think Paul is one of the more underrated coaches in the modern era of college baseball. There's just not that many humans walking around who have won a national title, who have taken multiple schools to the College World Series. I mean, there's so many different. I remember his era at LSU, your era, 6 straight years of being a top 8 national seed. I haven't gone back and looked that up, but that feels literally impossible to me. Like, that's basically like 6 years where your regular season just doesn't blip out. Like, you just nail your regular season 6 straight years. So tell me and you guys are all now in coaching. So, the way we were coached as players certainly impacts us, the way we go about our business in this profession. Let's start with you, Nolan, your relationship with Paul Mainieri and kind of maybe something about him that has impacted the way you coach now.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about Paul is, for me personally, is when you play for the person and, came in and, got that program back to where it needed to be. That person becomes like a second father figure in your life. He really cared about the small things. Remember the first time I ever met him, he came in and he was like, I thought we were going to talk about baseball. And he goes, "Hey man, like you're a 26 ACT. How do you have a 2.75 GPA at LSU?" And I was like, okay. And he was like, "I mean, you're better than that. Like, there's no underachieving students that are overachieving players." And that was just something that really stuck with me for a long time. And Carl will know this. I think that's because the APR was starting to come down the pipeline, right, Carl? So he was getting a little bit ahead of the game, getting that APR back on track. But yeah, I mean, he always took the time. If you were whether you're the number 1 player on the team or if you're the 35th player on the team, he'd come through stretch line and just make you feel like $1 million and make, he was really big on like everybody having a really defined role, right? So like for me, like you're like the 9th best pitcher on the staff every year. So like your role is your role, but you accept it and you embrace it. And he makes sure that you feel good about that role and how important that role can be. Obviously you're surrounded by superstars like, Ryan Schimpf and Lewis Coleman and, Anthony Renato and Jared Mitchell. The team was just surrounded. DJ LeMahieu is still playing. Like, I'm 38 years old. How is this guy still playing baseball? Like, I don't know, but he's still doing it. So, yeah, I think the biggest thing I take away from him is just the way that he makes everybody in the program feel. And I try to continue that today. That's something that's always stuck with me. And, not being a superstar player at LSU is something that you never forget. You never forget how hard the game is. So you're always, sometimes that, 17th best pitcher wants that extra round of BP in the cages, and you make sure you throw it to him because you want to make him feel a big part of the thing as well. So.
Yeah. Paul, so a couple of things I'll share about Paul. He was the coach at Notre Dame after my coach, Pat Murphy, who's now with the Brewers. And you know how it goes. It's like, well, maybe this is just for shallow people like me, but it's, you don't always love the coach after your coach. It's like, well, it was better when we were there. There's a little bit of that in there. And then, you meet Paul and you're like, oh, dang it. There's no way you cannot like this guy. And then he's awesome and just like even accelerates the program more. And then you meet his assistant is Brian O'Connor and you're just like, goodness gracious, this guy's actually really got his act together. This is awesome. And I would say, Nolan, for you, like your senior year, I'll brag on you. I mean, you go 3 1/3, 10 outs in the game 2 of the College World Series finals. And I can only imagine if you're Paul, it was kind of like Smoke Laval is a great baseball coach and the pressure of LSU and the shadow of, I mean, to say there's a shadow after Skip Bertman would be like saying that the Empire State Building's got a shadow, right? Like it just, and you guys don't win that national title. It's, the air's hardly breathable in Baton Rouge. So anyway, yeah, really cool. Hey, so Laff, let's go to you for a second. Mike B, Mike Bianco, he's your coach as a senior. And, this is, again, one of the Mount Rushmore coaches in the SEC. He's been there so long. I tried to research who's got the most actual SEC wins. And I don't know who it is, but he's going to be in that mix. I mean, just incredible, the track record. What was that like? I want you to talk about playing for Mike Bianco.
Well, he is tempered since my first year. He has a little bit more patience. But at the time that he came in, he was trying to, flip the mindset of a program. And so I still remember it, to this day. I look back as a recruiting coordinator and I go, God, man, we were bad. We were a untalented team. That would scare the heck out of me. But he took that group of players and we had a really good regular season, finished in a regional at Tulane, but he changed the mindset. And there's always been a toughness about him. There's always been an attention to detail, and there's always been I guess, a belief system that he installs in the players that gets you to show up and play. And that is the thing that, he has been from day one till today. He is a super, super consistent guy. Who he is, I mean, the guy you're going to deal with every single day. Like he's the same guy every day. As a player, as a coach, it's an easy person to work for, play for, and understand. And I think that's why the program has been consistent over time.
And I just think program building is one of my passions, and it's harder now, obviously. Well, that's maybe editorial. It's more mysterious now, I guess, because we just never been in an era like this. But what you just described, Laugh, is like that's just good old fashioned program building. Like you come in and people have to think different, and the talent level's got to improve. Was there an event like in the fall or like a game your senior year spring where there was like that evidence where it's not like this dude's just not talking a big game, like this feels different, this looks different?
I think there were several moments like that from really Nolan knows. I mean, it's if you've been in this family tree, you're going to know some of the motivational speeches, which probably Nolan knows right now. But there were a couple times that we realized, hey, like it's not okay to lose. It's not okay to show up and not give your best effort. And like the biggest thing that happened our senior year is we were playing Murray State in the midweek. We were playing 2 games. We played them on Tuesday, played them on Wednesday. Tuesday, we beat the heck out of them. Come out Wednesday, it is a monsoon, and Bernie Hutchinson, by some miracle chance, hits an oppo homer, the left center field gap, for us to call the game in the 6th inning as a tie in the middle of a torrential downpour. I'm going to say this is as politically correct as I can. We had a motivational session as a team. After that, we were very motivated throughout the outfield. There were some great quotes and great lines, but what it was essentially saying is it's not okay to not show up and give your best. So we were a little bit of fear, like a little bit scared to death, and we went on a run. Like we won, I think, like 9 or 10 games in a row. And I remember like losing. We were losing. The next game we lost was on a Tuesday at Memphis, and we were losing in the late innings. And I am up on the front step. I am punching everybody like in the chest, like, hey man, you were into this game. I am not going through what we went through. That is not happening. I can't survive it. I'm a catcher. All right. My legs just don't work that well. So I think it's just the mindset of, showing up every day, what you demand of yourself. And that's the cool thing about college athletics. I mean, if you look at the pro side of it, the talent over, 162 games is just going to bear out. But what you realize as, all of us work for great head coaches. When you look at the great head coaches, they understand like your discipline, your attention to detail, and the motivational side of showing up every single day. You can take a group of 18 to 22-year-olds that may not have quite the talent as the team you're playing, and certainly do some special things in the calendar year of a college baseball season.
I love that. The motivation piece, that generation of coach, they were Peloton instructors just in a previous life. They didn't realize that conditioning was really important to them, which is great.
It was.
So, yes. Gabe, so you could, I'm not gonna dictate which coach you talk about. I feel like you guys had some awesome coaches at Auburn, and then you had the football thing going on. Go wherever you want with this, but like your experience playing for Coach Baird and that staff.
Yeah, okay. The 3 guys that I started out with, Coach Baird, Hal Baird, Steve Renfro, and Tommy Slater, I can't imagine a better staff of knowing baseball. Played 10 years professionally, part of 7 seasons in the big leagues. I never had anybody I thought knew more about hitting than Steve Renfro. I never was around a smarter mind than Hal Baird. Hal Baird and Joe Madden would probably be that would be an unbelievable intellectual conversation about the game of baseball if you got those 2 guys together. So I was extremely blessed when I got to Auburn. I knew all about football, the ins and the outs, the ups and the downs. I knew the culture that was brought up. I said my dad played football at Auburn. I did not know baseball. One of the biggest butt chewings I got was that I swung at a 3-0 pitch in an 18-run game one time on a Tuesday with the bases loaded and hit a grand slam. And I didn't know any better. Now, they found that hard to believe. And I now know better than to do that. But when I rounded second, Steve Renfro had his back toward me facing the stands and would not give me a high five as I ran by him. And so having men that were tough enough to do that to a kid. And of course I got, we'll say a motivational session after that one too. But the guys like Steve Renfro and Hal Baird, Tommy Slater, who's been in pro ball and in the big leagues a little bit with the Mets, who was later, both Steve Renfro and Tommy Slater were head coaches at Auburn later. It allowed me to grow in the game. I had obviously a talent for the game, but man, they taught me the game when I was at Auburn, and I was just so blessed by that. Coach Baird's so intelligent. Most of the time when he was chewing you out, everybody was looking around trying to figure out his vocabulary words that he just threw out there, and nobody knew what he was saying. But when you really figured it out, man, he was really cutting you down really low. You just had to take a second to figure out what he was saying to you when he was doing it. But one of the things that I use in coaching now is something that I remember he said early, and that was it. He only felt like he had 2 or 3 bullets a year, and that what I mean by that is to really get after you or challenge you. And he said he felt like after that, you were, as a coach, you were kind of like clanging cymbals, that nobody really paid attention to your words. And that was really true of him. You desperately didn't want to let him down, and not because he was overbearing or an overlord, but because you had such respect for his presence in his mind. And that if he let you have it, or if he let the team have it, you perked your ears up and you paid attention, because it didn't happen very often. And it was a real reason why he was that mad or that upset.
Oh, it's so great. It's so funny, Gabe. I've heard about Coach Baird, but never. I think I've met him once, but I didn't know that he was like a hyper intellectual guy. And that's like a common thing. Like Wayne Graham, who just passed, he was like could have been like he was into sci-fi and like super literary. And then like Skip Bertman, like he would have been running if Skip Bertman didn't start the LSU baseball program, he would have been the CEO of like Goldman Sachs or something, right? Like he was just that person. And I think Jim Wells at Alabama was like an attorney who chose baseball, or he was also like crazy smart. And yeah, it's so great. I didn't know that about Coach Baird. That's so cool.
Well, one of the things I would say that brought around such success, by the way, you cut off the pack dominance at 99. I would like to point out that in 97, 4 SEC West teams did go to Omaha.
Nice.
In 1997, LSU obviously won it, but Auburn, Alabama, Mississippi State, and LSU all went in 97. I always felt like that we believed we could play with and beat anybody at Auburn because of how intelligent our coaches were and how we were taught the game and how to compete, and that we never had the most talent ever. I think that's a theme at Auburn for trying to get the most out of not quite as much as everybody else has. But man, we believed in what we were taught, and a lot of it came purely from our faith in our leader and how intelligent in the game of baseball he was.
So great. All right, let's do this. Still with the playing theme, but let's talk about atmospheres, because that's the other thing that and you could really trace this back to Ron Polk, I think, where and Skip Bertman comes from the Ron Frazier tree, and Ron Frazier changed this at Miami. It just wasn't as big as it was in the SEC West or East, really. But I want like your first. You're a college athlete now, and you always hear these expressions that as a baseball player in the SEC, you won't feel that juice again until you're in the big leagues. I think I could argue that you won't feel that juice again until you're in the big league playoffs. Yeah. But, the size of the crowds and the electricity and the pressure and all those types of things. And this, originally I was thinking, I want you guys to tell me a visiting venue where you really felt that. But you could also say, like, maybe it was your first home game at your school, but maybe do both, like a home game that really you felt it, and then like a visiting venue where you felt like, oh my gosh, like this is, I heard about this. This is something. Nolan, you go first.
Yeah, I think the number one thing that stands out to me as a player, going through it a couple of different times, but when I finally went to Arkansas for the first time, and before the game, the there's probably about 12, 13,000 people there, and they start calling the Hogs, and you're like, oh, this is real. Like you feel like you're you feel like you're on a football field. I think there's so many just cool things that SEC West schools have. Like, if you give up a homer, at Ole Miss, you're going to see the beer shower in right field, right? Like you go to Mississippi State and they're going to be grilling and barbecue. You just hope you get up early so they just enjoy their party out there and don't really pay attention to the game, because if that thing's rocking, that place is tough, right? So, I'm sure, these guys, talk about, LSU, Chris Giott and the Go Tigers and all those people, right? So I think there's just so many unbelievable environments. Like, I don't want to say that you become numb to them because every time you go somewhere, it's just so cool again. But I'm glad that I'm a coach now and not some 18-year-old freshman going out there trying to toe the slab, on the road in the SEC.
Love it. Laugh, how about you?
There's one that clearly sticks out in my head on the road as a freshman at Mississippi State. First off, the configuration of the stadium was way different, and I was the bullpen catcher. I was a freshman. Like, I am down in the bullpen, and I feel something hitting me in the back. And there is a kid, a 12-year-old kid in front of his little 12-year-old girlfriend that has run a stick through the chain link fence and is stabbing me in the back and then turning around and laughing at me. And I just want to spike the ball off his head. That's how I feel. And then I just, I realized how big it was. Obviously, the venue there, and sure, certainly Coach Polk did so much for college baseball. But playing there and I, even later on in that same game, getting in the game, throwing the ball down to second base, in between innings, slipping on home plate and falling on my face, and 11,000 Mississippi State fans laughing at me. Those are some things that's at 45. You remember clear as a bell. But certainly, like some of the venues that Nolan talked about, LSU is obviously unbelievable. The thing that always struck me going into the old box is, one, how loud it was, but how sharp the fans were. Like, we turned a triple play and we got a standing O from them. Now they were winning, so that made it a lot easier. And I think they were about 8 beers deep. But those were some cool moments when I was playing that will just stick out to me. And then of course at home it was a series against Mississippi State, and we are playing. It's packed. A guy named Ryan Buckvich punches out a guy to get out of a big situation, and I can feel the crowd, like the yelling, the screaming, like I can feel it like in my chest as I'm running off the field. And I think that's the cool opportunity that this league provides.
So great. Gabe, now you had the football experience, so I wonder how that colors your, but go for it. Yeah, go for it.
It definitely colors it, but it's two totally different realities. Football is just such a roar. You don't really hear, for the most part, individual voices, individual fans. It's just a decimal level that's just really high. And it was never a thing with me like, oh my gosh, I'm going and playing in front of 13,000 in Starkville or something like that, because I had played in front of 85, 90,000 people in football, but it was the individual people. I would say the 2 road trips, both my freshman year, went to both of them. And then of course my junior year got to go back. But my first one was Baton Rouge, and I played left field, and I don't want to take anybody from LSU off right now, but the old box and the new box, and maybe it's just because I'm old and I played in the old one, but I don't think you can compare those two things. I feel like the crowd was so much more on top of you at the old one. Everybody was closer. It was just different. And I know my brother and my dad almost got in a fight with a guy that was heckling me out in left field. And of course I'd played football, which threw more gas on the fire, that the guys were after me. It was really the first time I'd had significant fans right behind me in the outfield, and you can hear every voice. Like I said, it's not just a big roar. You can hear everything that they're telling you over and over again. And Lord help you if you strike out, if you swing a breaking ball in the dirt and you have to run back out there and listen to what they're telling you until you can get another at bat. And my gosh, if you go 0 for 4, you wouldn't believe the things that can come out of people's mouths. And then the same thing in Starkville. And one of the coolest things about that, and talking about appreciating baseball, we went into Mississippi State, 2 in the country my freshman year. We had a really, really good team. in 1999, and they just buggy stomped us twice, and Friday and Saturday. And we finally won Sunday. And I asked Coach Barrett and just said, look, these people have been trying to feed me ever since I got here. Can I go get some food? And he just smiled and said I could. And I ran out there and they loaded me up with a plate. And then a guy ran over from center field and gave me another plate and said, hey, this is for Malin Kent. He was our center fielder. Would you please give this to him when you get back? And so we all had barbecue on the way back, even though we had just won. And it just, man, it's special places to go and play. And you know, the smoke hanging out over the field it's you know, memories that you cherished. It just was awesome. I would say at home for me was Alabama. The first time we hosted Alabama at home, we won Friday and Saturday, and Sunday was the first day of spring practice, and I was doing both. And I literally played in the baseball game, ran to the football complex, changed, and was about 20 minutes late for the start of football practice. And I go out there, and they're like, "Hey, did you win?" And I was like, "Well, no, but we won the series." And they're like, "Why'd you lose?" I'm like, "You know, we won the series. It's not like football. You know, we didn't just lose the game. You know, we did win the series, but it was just such a big deal." And texted me earlier, said he was listening. Lance Cormier started that Sunday and got the win against us. So tip of the hat to Lance.
LC, well done.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take a break in a second, but the just the LSU thing, obviously, you know, I get to play there at Notre Dame, and I'll never forget. You guys talked about the noise. You know, like Notre Dame, we're in the Midwest. This is the 90s, and like, you know, people have like a radio playing music, and we're taking BP at LSU, and there's an old song by Poison. I can't, but anyway, there's a crashing sound in the song, and we're taking BP, and the LSU sound system is so loud. They play that song, and the crashing sounds in the beginning, and we stopped our BP. We thought there was like a car accident in our dugout. Like we had never heard a noise like that on a baseball field before. And then we took our Arizona State team in 2000, and we won the pack to LSU, and they beat us. The Tigers beat us the first two games. Our bus pulls up on Sunday. I mean, I don't know, what is it, like 3 hours before the game, 2 hours before the game, and there are people out there tailgating already, and they're taking a broom to the driveway where the bus is going to be going. And, you know, like the West Coast has great baseball, but they don't have anything like that. Like it is, you know, fans that beat our team to the field so they could have a broom that they picked out to sweep the road before our bus. So, you know, you just leave there and you're like, goodness gracious, this is, as the college baseball fan in you is just like, this is so good. This is so awesome. So we're gonna do players in a second. Let me say thanks again to our friends at Netting Pros. It's college baseball's top facility equipment and netting supplier. They're the official netting partner of D1 Baseball in our Sunday night conversations. You can learn more at nettingpros.com. I want to say this again. You know, like Netting Pros is a group it's the best service, the best products, but they really love our sport. So if you're doing business with them, anyone in amateur baseball, if they're putting their stuff in your facility, it's going to be personal to them. They're not just selling you something. Like, it's going to really mean something. And I think in any part of our life, that's the people we want to do business with. So thanks again to the folks at Netting Pros. All right, so let's stay with your playing career, and then we'll take this as a transition to coaching. Who's a player that just stands out from your playing career? I always think there's like a player on another team, or you could do a teammate if you wanted, but who's a player that you always think of when you think of guys you got to play against in this division? Nolan, you go first.
I keep on forgetting we're only talking about the West.
Well, you could go East, actually. That might be fun too.
Probably the coolest thing I ever saw, David Price just absolutely rammed it down our throats and let us know that he was ramming it down our throats. He punched out 17 that day, I think. And it was like, that's when like velo was starting to like really start to climb. And it's like, this guy's sitting 94 to 97 and he's left-handed. Oh, and he's got a slider and he's just putting it wherever he wanted. And then I remember they brought in, forget his first name, maybe it was Casey Weathers.
Yeah.
Closer up to 101, and you're just like, oh, this is another gear, you know, like that always sticks out to me. That outing, just being in the dugout as a player, and just like he was popping his glove and Ric Flairing it around the mound. It
So
was
great.
It was disgusting.
So Nolan, we'll come to you in a second. I'll give you an LSU player. When we played at LSU, Paul Bird was the starting pitcher for LSU. We had a leadoff hitter from San Diego. Again, Pat Murphy is our coach. Murph's like 31 years old, like completely nuts, right? Like Murph, even as a 60-year-old, is nuts in the most awesome way ever. You can imagine him in his early 30s. And Lace is this, goofy guy from San Diego, but a really good player. So Paul Bird just murders him in the first at bat of the game. Like, it was as if the baseball was black. He couldn't see it. So Layson, and he was a good player. That was unusual. He comes back to the dugout and everyone's asking him, hey, what's he got? And Layson goes on this tirade of like, it's the nastiest stuff I've ever seen. Like, this dude is going to maul us tonight. And Murph just about murders Layson in the dugout. Like, we hear the words coming out of his mouth and like, our third base coach is about to commit homicide. Like this is, but he wasn't wrong, by the way. Like Bird was, he was so good. So good.
I do have a West. And
Okay.
Matt, you're going to help me with the name. The closer that y'all had with the cutter, what was his name?
Scott Biddle.
Scott, let me tell you something. Scott Biddle punched out. Go look at those stats one day. It's like 138 punchies in like 70 innings. And I remember he comes in and he's just carving. And,
yes,
the hitters are coming back and, we're like, oh, what is it? What's it look like? And Matt Clark, our first baseman, he led the nation in homers that year. He goes, I don't know. Like, I just swing and then I think it's going to hit the bat and it's just gone. He was throwing like 92 mile per hour, like Mariano Rivera cutters. Just disgusting.
So great. Laugh, who are you going with?
I remember my freshman year. Of course, I'm not playing a lot. LSU comes to town, and Eddie Furness hits one with like that gold Easton about 15 feet high to the back of the tennis court, 100 feet behind the fence. And I'm going like, I am not in Arkansas anymore. Like, this is like, I really like, I don't know if I need to take steroids. I don't know what I need to do, but like, this is real. And I just remember him hitting it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is a memory that stuck out where you just go, you realize like the magnitude of what you're playing in, the players you're playing against, and what a really good player looks like when he's on the field.
Oh, so great. And he's a doctor now, right? Isn't that true? He's a physician?
That is correct.
The greatest human being of like all time.
Oh,
yes,
that's awesome. Gabe, what say you?
Oh my gosh. I think it was my really, with that same series, I told Mississippi State just thumped us twice, Friday and Saturday. And it was my welcome to this is what a real slider looks like. And it was from Matt Ginner from Mississippi State. And it was one of those deals. It was like you're talking about, like, I know it was right there. It was right there and I was going to hit it. And then somehow it wound up 2 feet below me in the dirt. And I'm not sure how that happened. Like, it was velocity plus slider, and just, you don't see that in high school. You definitely didn't see it on a football field. It was just different. I remember Check swinging a ball back to the mound and getting thrown out and going to first base, who was Tommy Slater, and I asked him, I said, what was that? He said, well, you hit it. Why can't you tell me what it was? Like, I ain't got a clue what it was. I'm sorry. But yeah, Matt Ginner at Mississippi State. As a team, I thought Alabama in '99, Andy Phillips and Kelly Gullidge and Britt Boyd, and they just had Scott McClanahan was a freshman. They had a pile of guys that just looked like they were on a different planet. That just knocked the ball. I thought Andy Phillips was maybe the best hitter I'd ever seen at that point in time. It might have been. He was pretty incredible as a hitter in baseball.
Oh, that's great. All right, so let's fast forward to your coaching careers now. So I'll give you an example. At Arizona State, we got to coach against Mark Pryor the year, right? 2001. He comes in, he's averaging 14 punch outs a game. Just to be clear, there's only 27 outs recorded in the game, and he's punching out half of them. And we only punched out 7 times that night and felt like we won. We in fact lost 7-1, but at least we won something. But I'll never forget facing him. It's like the guy's just like dotting 95 miles an hour, throws his slider wherever he wants, whenever he wants. Just like he's the size of a building. just could never, was amazing. Felt like you should have had to buy a ticket to coach in that game. What about you, Nolan? Who's a player in the SEC West that you coached against that you'll never forget?
When I was when we were at A&M and Paul Skeens pitched against us, and Gabe, you stand in the third base box, and before that, when you stand in the third base box, and there are just times where you're just like, oh no, like what? I remember the first time I felt that way was Jack Leiter. He was throwing 96, but it looked like 105, like from the third base box. And then then Paul Skeens, that took it to another level. And then one that was close to that this year was Hagen Smith against us. And that was, those two for me are just in another like stratosphere as far as just like stuff that you see. But I remember before the game, they had a flyover and Skeens is pitching. This dude just transferred from Air Force. Like this guy was going to give his life like for his country. Like just the bomber just over the field. And then he just proceeded to just ram it. And I'm just standing there like, we get a hit. And I'd be like, oh, we got a hit. Like, like that ridiculous of stuff. And then Hagen Smith was in that territory. He looked like he was throwing aspirin this year. You know, it's 97 to 100, 92 mile per hour slider. You know, it's just stupid. You know, those two guys stick out to me a lot.
Well, that's great. Laugh, what say you?
Well, I was going to say Skeens because, I mean, he's a unicorn. Like, I don't know if we'll ever see somebody that polished pitching on a field against college baseball players. I mean, essentially, he was a big league all-star in the SEC. That's
right.
What we were looking at. Getting out of the West a little bit was David Price for me. I just remember standing on the field against him. We were playing. He's going toe-to-toe with Will Klein, who was a second rounder here. And we are tied, and we get through 9 innings. And it's like, all right, he's got to be out by now. Like he's done. And then my man comes trotting out for the 10th, and you're just like, is this even real? Like, what is happening? Like, it is 8 degrees in Nashville. He is throwing 97 miles an hour from the left side, and it feels like he could throw all day. That was the one that, you know, kind of stuck out for me outside of Skeens, just because they were so unique and seemed like, I guess, generational talents.
Yep. Love it. Gabe?
Yeah, Skeens is a common thread, and Hagen Smith, I was going to say both those guys. And I'll just say that the game that Skeens threw against us, we did a good job, but he had thrown like 80% fastballs to the two previous opponents. And we'd geared up pitch machines throwing 100 from about 6 feet. I felt like trying to get our guys ready for it. And we hit a couple of fastballs, and by the third inning, he went away from it and just obliterated us with changeups and sliders. I mean, it just, and then after the game, you go in and you look at the pitch chart, and you got the 9 zones. He didn't throw a pitch the whole night in the 3 middle zones. And that was after I felt like we were able to take his fastball away from him. And he was that good, as Laugh just said. I mean, it was a big league all-star pitching on a college mound. And that's really what it was. I've never seen anybody that polished with that stuff as he. I would say I got the privilege, again, stretching maybe into the East a little bit, of watching Casey Mize and Brady Singer hook up against each other twice in the 2018 season. And I thought Singer's ball had as much energy as almost anybody I had seen. It was so hard for a right-hander with the ball boring back into them, and then the big league slider off of it. To do anything off him, and we were not very left-handed, and it was a really tough matchup for us. And I just, like I said, those two dudes locked horns twice in the 2018 season, and it was special to watch. And I've always considered Singer one of the toughest college pitchers I've seen to hit.
And he was ornery too on the mound. Like I've heard wonderful guy off the field, but like on the mound, like looked like somebody, like his girlfriend broke up with him during his second warm-up pitch or something.
Yeah, and I loved it. I didn't, because I was trying to coach him against him and beat him. But, you know, it's one of those deals. It's like, man, if I got that guy on my team, I'm pretty fired up about it. He had a little bit of a little Bob Gibson in him, maybe, that he just didn't like you very much. and that's usually a good quality in a pitcher.
Oh, so good. Hey, let's do this. So I want to talk about Hoover for a second. I think that's there's so many things that are just like signature qualities of SEC baseball, that you can't pick one, but Hoover's one of them. And I tell baseball fans all the time, like, that should be on your bucket list. And that if you're dabbling in college baseball, that's a great way to really like kind of wet your whistle. I just think I've gotten to go once. I'm usually doing another tournament, and I'll cherish it forever. It was so awesome. I mean, everything about it. But I'm looking for and this could be player or coach, but I'm looking for a Hoover memory from you guys. I'll start you guys. The year I was there, I think it was 2017, and it's a Tuesday night, and LSU and Mississippi State are playing. It's the late game. There's 13,000 people in the stands. It's a Tuesday night. Like, it's a school night. It's like everyone's got work tomorrow. I mean, in theory, they've got work tomorrow. And 13,000 people. I'm like, what on earth is going on here? Like, there's big league parks that don't have 13,000 people tonight on a Tuesday. And it was just so awesome. So Nolan, you go first. What's a Hoover memory for you?
The first thing I want to say about Hoover, and they'll agree with me, is like, you're getting to that point where you're like, we're almost this close to getting to play somebody else. Like, we're almost through the league of unforgiveness. Like, like you get past that and you're like, thank God we're just playing somebody else. It's just, it's a meat grinder. It was a meat grinder, just would grind you down as a player or a coach. But my biggest memory of SEC tournament was when I was coaching. It was the fog game. And we were playing Florida, and there's a pop-up hit to the outfield, and I had just turned around to the third base umpire, and I'm like, hey, dude, is this safe? Like, this doesn't seem safe, because if a ball goes in, I don't know where the ball's hit. And then all of a sudden, like, Daniel Cabrera, like, hits this tennis lob shot out to left field. The left fielder's like this. There's actually a clip of me like sending a guy, and like nobody knows where the ball is. Like, the ball gets thrown in, and you're just like, and then that was finally the last play, because I think Sully was going to kill the umpiring crew if we didn't stop that game. But yeah, the fog game was like my biggest memory, like, as a coach.
Oh, I love that. Laugh?
Well, it's kind of a twofold memory. One's a personal memory with my son. We had a really good run of SEC tournaments. One of the moments I'll talk about, but he would come ride on the bus, and we would typically play to the weekend, and stay at the Hyatt or whatever is attached to the mall. There's a game room. There's all that. Well, we get to 22, and I think we're the 9 or 10 seed. We're at the JV motel, as I would call it. So there's no game room for my kid. And he's used to like Dave and Buster's, hanging out with the guys. Like, it's a week-long like bonanza. We lose like the first game. We were bounced in like 18 hours. And he looks at me like after, like when we're getting ready to leave in the morning, like, this is a bunch of crap, man. Like, what are we doing? Like, I'm usually here a week, and you pull this on me. So that was one moment that I laughed out about Clem. But probably the cool thing, in 18 when we won it, you just get out there for championship day, and kind of like Nolan says, you're just so gassed is not the right word, but you just feel like, hey, you have a chance to take a breath, because you kind of have a good idea of where you're going to finish up and go to the postseason. You're going to host. You're going to be this seed. You're going to go play, and then of course we're playing LSU, which at that time, going back to Paul Maneri, I had a thing with Cliff Godwin, because Cliff coached with Paul, where we were convinced that he had like kidnapped a leprechaun and kept him in his basement, and would just go like punch him in the forehead to get any kind of luck that he needed. And like when you played LSU at like his record at the SEC tournament is unreal. It's unreal. So we're playing LSU in 18, in the championship game, and go on to win it. And I just remember, like, one, the size and the scope of the crowd, because LSU is going to travel. Oxford's 3 hours away. Like, you've got 13, 14, 15,000 people at the Hoover Met, and it's just an awesome, awesome setting at a time where it felt really good to celebrate because of, like what Nolan said, the meat grinder you've been through. So that's probably the coolest SEC, tournament moment that I've had.
That's awesome. I remember, Nolan, I think you were on staff there. Like, you guys won Hoover 3 years in a row, if I'm not mistaken. And you're looking at it from the outside, like, that's like winning the lottery multiple times in your life. Like, that's not even possible to just like all the luck and like how good you'd have to be. And then you're also thinking, like, do you even want to do that? Like, is that even a good thing to win that thing 3 years in a row?
The thing about like this league is you're always playing for something. Like you're always, it's not, you get to 15 wins and you're like, we're in a regional, and then you're like, but we could be a host. We could be and then you get there and you're like, if we could win these first 2 games and get the bye week, we could be a national seed. And then it becomes a certain threshold with it. Like it's over. Right. So like Paul was so great at the whole tournament, and he gives a lot of credit to it because when he was at Notre Dame, because you had to win that Big East tournament to make a regional. He had a team one year that won 50 games and didn't make a regional. So he had mastered, the pitching alignment and all those things. He gives a lot of credit to that. But then we'll also get to a point where like you're at the semifinal game, he'd be like, hey, Nolan, you're starting. And I've never made a start. And we win, and, it just would just happen. It was this, like Laff was talking about earlier, like the belief system, when that thing kind of gets rolling, we felt like under Paul at that place, like it was already done. Like we were going to go win it. He made you feel that way.
Like Laff's son until he let him down.
Yeah. And then he had to stay at the hotel 7 miles away. Didn't even get the police escort.
Yeah, like, hey, they're like, what is this crap, Dad? We got like no game room. I can't go to the mall. Dave and Buster's is not down there. This is.
They make you take a unicycle to the field. You just got to keep on.
We'll have to talk after the year, Dad. Gabe, how about you? This could be player or coach, like a memory from Hoover.
Yeah, I've been, man. I got log, and I got it as your job still. I got it as a TV personality as well. Mike Morgan and I did the longest game in SEC tournament history. There was the first one I ever did was Mississippi State and Kentucky. I think it's been beaten now, but lasted, which it seems like every year there's a game stopping at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. When that one finally got over, had a similar experience as Laff with my children, because when I was doing it on the TV side, I mean, I was there all week. We didn't have quite the game room and everything, but kids are out of school. They're coming to Birmingham. They're staying in a hotel room with me. They're enjoying all the different stuff that's going on. My kids and family love baseball. It was just like a week little vacation there in Birmingham. And then a couple of years ago, we go up there and we lost the first game, and it was the same thing. It was like, in fact, my daughter was getting out of school that day and was going to come. And it was like, I don't even get to come now. Like, what is this? What are y'all doing? Get your acting.
What are y'all doing?
Let's go. I mean, we spent so much time there as a family. I think that's one of my biggest memories of the SEC tournament. The SEC tournament to me was finally at the point of the year that, man, school gets out, my kids, my wife, everybody got to come and be a part of it. And they are always to a certain extent, but that was always a special part of Hoover. I think as a player, I thought one of the coolest things for me was that I played there for 3 years as a player. And then I played for the Tennessee Smokies in AA, and going back to that ballpark and playing the Birmingham Barons before they moved to where they are in downtown Birmingham, and playing in that ballpark as a professional after playing there in the SEC tournament was a really cool memory for me. A lot of people from my hometown, that was as close as I had gotten. They made the trip up. Hoover's a special place, and I hope I'm not stepping on anybody at the SEC's feet with this, but I hope they never move it. It's a great venue and a great spot.
Yeah,
it's really cool to see as a player. 2005 was my first time going, and just the production that it is now, with, the stuff down the right field line and the SEC network. And, you just get to catch up with a bunch of the guys that played in the league that are doing what Gabe was doing at that point. Todd Walker and DeLucci and all those guys are there. They have blown that thing out of the water and just made it a tremendous event. That's what it feels like. A mini Omaha.
Yeah.
We just say it every year. It is. We feel like it's really easier to win Omaha than it is the SEC tournament, which makes what y'all did at LSU that much more amazing. And just to echo what both those guys said, it just, one of the messages we give to our guys every year is when we get through the SEC tournament, it's like we get into a regional, like, guys, it doesn't get harder. Like this, you're not fixing to see something you haven't seen. Like you can still face good teams, you can still face good pitching, but by and large, it's easier, and you still have to go play well. But you've just come through 10 weeks of super regionals when you come through the SEC, and then you go to the SEC tournament. If you go deep into that, you are always playing a couple teams that are going to be in Omaha, and then you finally almost feels like sometimes you get to a regional, you can take a breath, and that's weird to say, but it's kind of the truth.
Yeah, it's cool to work, for Coach Maneri and now Coach Schlossnagle, because Coach Schlossnagle, now in the SEC. And I remember we were playing Auburn our first year together at home, and it's Sunday, and Auburn's brings in their ninth best arm. It's just, we're back and forth. You're getting down towards the bottom of the barrel. And he was one of y'all's starters last year, Gabe. Big physical righty.
Yeah, Chase also.
Chase, he's 97 to 99 with an 84 mile per hour splitty. And I come back in the dugout, and Jim looks at me and goes, "What world am I living in?" I'm like, "Yeah, that'll be like their Friday guy next year." And he was like, "Oh, this is it's just the depth is just ridiculous."
Yeah, that's well said. I'll give you guys my Hoover take is because I'm really, like you said, Gabe, I was going there for TV, so you're almost like a fan, really. And we were staying at that gorgeous resort that has a golf course there, and I think I forget what it's called. I don't want to mess it up, but you walk in this grand entrance, and the SEC tournament has a logo, right? Like that's for starters. Like, oh wow, this tournament, Hoover, has its own logo, and the logo is being hologrammed onto the lobby floor, like the size of life, and you're like, okay. First of all, that's like a Vegas type of thing. Second of all, it's the baseball tournament is the logo, not like some rock concert. And then you check into your room, and there's a little placard on the counter that is, hey, if you're looking for the SEC tournament, it's channel 29. And I'm like scrolling through my life. Have I ever been in a hotel room that had a special placard helping me find college baseball? The answer would be no. That's Hoover. So awesome. All right, final question, Nolan. So I had this conversation with Mark Etheridge. I feel like I can say this for him. He's excited about no divisions because he feels like, hey, some of these matchups that we just don't get very often, you'll get more. Like you'll get more interesting matchups. And he brought that up because I was crushed when they killed the divisions, because I just feel like, a team wins the SEC West, like that's a big deal to me as an outsider. Team wins the East, like that's a big deal. I still very much believe in regular season championships, and I know that I got to get over that because it's not the world that I grew up in. But what say you guys? And Nolan, you go first. Like, will you miss the divisions, or are you also kind of excited for the newness of not playing the same exact teams every year?
Yeah, I'm gonna miss it. Like I thought that was, these two guys here, they work their tails off. We see them, we see each other. We spend as much time together on the road recruiting, as a unit out there in the SEC. We're all at the same ballparks. We're all recruiting the same kids, and we want to compete against each other. We want to beat each other in the recruiting process. We want to beat them in the weekend series, but like we all understand like what we and our families are going through, you know what I'm saying? Having these jobs. So there's just a lot of like respect. So like that SEC West thing, there was like a real respect factor with everybody within it. We wanted to compete against each other. I think the other thing I'm going to miss is like, you just knew, like I could just sit here right now and just know, okay, like we go to Ole Miss this year, because we went there, they came to us last year. Like you already had it mapped out in your head, like all that kind of stuff. But yeah, going to the ballpark, going to those venues consistently every other year is definitely something that I'm going to miss. Obviously, this expands it with, Texas and Oklahoma coming into it, and then A&M Missouri coming into it probably 8 years ago, 9 years ago, however long ago it was. It just it's expanding. So the baseball is just ridiculous and super competitive. So I guess one big, huge division is going to take a little bit of adjustment, but that's the thing I'll miss the most is just, going to Auburn on Thursday night and Gabe coming over and hanging out for 10 or 15 minutes. And, then on Saturday, recapping the Friday game. And those are the things that you get to enjoy on a every other year basis when you go to somebody else's place. So.
Yeah, that's great insight. Go ahead, Laugh. What say you? Will you miss the divisions?
I will. I think just, like all of us have been involved with this league for such a long time. Like Nolan said, you kind of get into the routine, and there's places that you really enjoy going to play, and it's going to be hostile, it's going to be tough, but you're still looking forward to it. And kind of like Nolan said, those are coming up. Like it's kind of like ingrained in you. Okay, yeah, we go to, LSU next year, or we go to Auburn next year. And for me, I've been doing it, oh gosh, since 1998. And so I think there's always been, some of that. So, now looking at the schedule, I will miss some of that. But when you look at the SEC schedule too, it still gives you heartburn.
Right.
I sit there with Clem and we go all right, let's look at these schedules, and you never know what anything is going to be.
Yeah.
Every weekend is a bear, which won't change. And so that's why, people go, well, you would miss going to LSU, or you miss going to Auburn, or you would miss going to some of these venues. I'm like, yeah, because it's all the same. I mean, you can play someone on a given weekend. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're, the number one team in our league or whatever. It is up for grabs every single weekend. So, years ago, I got past even thinking about or trying to, well, how do we match up with them? And I'm like, it doesn't matter. You just got to go in there and play good baseball. If you play bad, you're going to lose. And so part of it is kind of like Nolan said, you enjoy the road trips. You enjoy, the parks, because you've been there, and you're going back, oh, they changed that. They did this. There's always something going on, which I think is pretty cool. And if I am being honest, I will miss that.
Yeah. Gabe, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm with both of them. I'm going to miss it. I think the SEC West was pretty special for a long, long time. And you don't need to change the way you're thinking, by the way. I don't know if I'll get slapped somebody by saying this, because I know winning Omaha is the ultimate. I got it. But if you run through a 30-game SEC schedule and you're the best, I don't know that that's not a harder or more tougher or well-deserved honor than to call yourself the SEC West or SEC champion of the regular season. That is a monumental task if you run through that and you come out the top. So, who knows what's going to happen if in my future that happens to a team that I'm coaching on. I don't know that wouldn't mean more to me than winning Omaha. I mean, winning Omaha, I got it. It would mean a ton, everything else. But if you're balancing those two things, man, that's an enormous, to me, accomplishment, achievement that means something. I agree with Laugh. Everybody's asked me, what's it going to be? Texas and Oklahoma coming into this, conference, man, it's going to make it even harder. And this is no disrespect, obviously, to Texas or Oklahoma, but it's not going to make it any harder. Would you rather play Texas or LSU? Would you rather play Oklahoma or Mississippi State? I mean, they're all great programs, whether you're playing one of them or whether you're playing Mississippi State, LSU, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, Florida. It doesn't matter. You're going to play a great baseball program. And as Laugh said, if you don't play well, you're going to get your butt kicked. And that is just the way it is, whether it's Texas or Oklahoma or one of the other programs, especially, being in the West. And I'll second several of the things of going that every other year. Those schools you're going to be at every other year and those campuses. And I'm going to miss knowing that and knowing that you're going to see those same guys. And it's just pretty special. You mentioned the camaraderie a little bit with the coaches and those campuses and stadiums, even the fans. Sometimes, you stay at a place long enough, they get to know who you are. And there's a little bit of respect that's built into that, but there's a lot of fun that they get after you a little bit. So I'm going to miss it. And I hope that it never gets discounted when you win your conference. That's a big deal. It's a real big deal.
Yeah, that's well said, you guys. Good insights. I didn't know where you guys would go with that. But and again, this is not us criticizing the decision. We know that again, nobody cares more about college baseball than the SEC. In this House settlement, baseball got treated like a major sport because the SEC thinks it's a major sport. That's how powerful the league is. And but I'll never forget a couple years ago, Florida and Arkansas. Yeah, it was the year LSU won the national title. LSU finished third in the SEC in the regular season. They won the national title. Only by a game or so, but Florida and Arkansas, I'm sorry, they tied for the regular season, and they were waiting for this is the last Saturday of the regular season because we always finish on Saturday getting ready for Hoover, and they were on their phones watching the game that was wrapping up that would decide whether they were champs or not. And there were clips on social media of the players seeing the final result. They're just huddled up and losing their minds. So if anybody was wondering how players feel about regular season championships, that picture was worth a trillion words. And so, yeah, so great. And thank you to you guys. I knew you guys would be great at this, to have played and coached in this incredible division. What an incredible achievement for your careers. What an incredible honor. And obviously you guys are Kendall, our good friend Kendall Rogers, tweeted this out today, which I appreciated so much, but he said this could be retitled the Good Guys Contest. I mean, you guys are so well regarded in our profession for, what you've accomplished, but who you are, how you carry yourself. So I really appreciate this. This has been fun. I knew it would be. And even though I'm a little heartbroken that the SEC West is gone, it's going to be just fine. The SEC, just like you guys said a moment ago, the SEC is never going to disappoint us when it comes to baseball and the drama and the caliber of play. So that's it for tonight. I want to say thanks again to our good friends at Netting Pros. Next Sunday night, we've only got a couple more of these this fall. Next Sunday night, I'm really looking forward to. We're going to have Jack Leggett, the legend, the Hall of Famer, and we're going to talk about the ACC past and present. Obviously, this year in Omaha, we had 8 teams. We had 4 from the SEC. We had 4 from the ACC. And that's very indicative of where the sport is right now. And Jack Leggett is on staff at Clemson. But also, I think about the legends that he coached against. Like, he got to coach against Mike Martin for years. Mike Fox. He got to coach against Dan McDonnell and Brian O'Connor when they were up-and-comers. Danny Hall, another Hall of Famer. So, Elliott Avent. So I'm really excited so pleased that Coach Leggett is back involved in college baseball in the way that he is, and excited to really chop up the ACC. So that's it. Everybody have a great week, and we will catch you next time on Sunday Night Conversations.